When a spoiled fashion influencer mocked a trembling old tailor in a dusty back alley shop, she thought it was just another day of being fabulous. But 1 week later, at the city's most elite gala, that same nobody walked in. And what happened next left the entire fashion world speechless. Who was he? And what secret had he been hiding all along? They say magic doesn't exist anymore, but sometimes it hides in the most unexpected places, like the trembling hands of an old tailor in a forgotten corner of the city. The day Maya walked into that dusty little shop, the rain was falling sideways. The city streets were slick with water and ambition. Maya was everything the world adored: young, glamorous, dripping with designer labels and self-importance. Her name trended weekly. Her face was plastered across billboards. And yet, despite her fame, her ego was hungrier than ever. She wasn't here by accident. She had heard whispers. In elite circles and hushed back rooms, people talked about an old man, a ghost of a tailor whose stitches were said to be alive, dresses that shimmered like liquid fire, gowns that made even the coldest heart skip a beat. A man with no online presence, no staff, no logos, just a name passed around like a secret spell. Zaman. Maya wanted that magic for herself, but when she stepped inside the shop, her smirk instantly returned. It was worse than she imagined. A cramped room with flickering lights, shelves overflowing with dusty fabric, and in the center, an elderly man hunched over an ancient sewing machine, humming something that made the air tremble ever so slightly. "You're Zaman?" she scoffed. "This place looks like a haunted attic." The old man looked up, his eyes kind but unreadable. He nodded once. "I need something for the elite gala," she said, dropping a roll of imported fabric on the counter. "And don't mess it up. This dress will be photographed 1,000,000 times." He said nothing, just smiled faintly. As he took her measurements, she continued to mock him. "Are your hands always this shaky?" she said. "God, don't get dust on me. Do you even know what Paris fashion looks like anymore?" He nodded again. "Your dress will be ready in 7 days." She rolled her eyes and walked out, shaking the rain off her coat like she was shaking him from her memory. But what she didn't know was that his memory was long, and so were his secrets. What Maya didn't see, what she couldn't begin to fathom, was what happened after she slammed the door and vanished into the rain. The tailor sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the spot where she had stood, her words still hanging in the air like the scent of expensive perfume and ego. Then, without a word, he reached beneath the counter and pulled out a wooden box, old, carved with strange symbols, the kind that felt like it didn't belong in this world. Inside were threads unlike any other, luminous, shifting in color depending on how the light touched them. Some said they were spun from stardust in time. Others claimed they were woven only for those with broken hearts and forgotten names. As the storm raged outside, he began to work. Not with bitterness, not with pride, but with a quiet purpose that had nothing to do with Maya, and everything to do with reminding the world who he truly was. 7 days later, the elite fashion gala was a cathedral of wealth and envy. Celebrities glided across the marble floor. Photographers clicked endlessly. Everyone wore something dazzling. But when Maya entered, the room fell into a spellbound silence. Her gown was otherworldly. Deep crimson silk hugged her frame like it was painted on. The embroidery shimmered with threads of gold and, was it silver? Number. The light bent around it unnaturally. The fabric seemed to breathe. People gasped audibly. Heads turned. A famous fashion critic whispered, This isn't stitched." It's summoned. Designers swarmed her. "Who made it?" they begged. "What house? What label?" Maya, high on admiration, tossed her hair and laughed. "Oh, just some poor old tailor I found in a dumpy little shop. Lucky, huh?" But then, the music stopped. A murmur swept the room like a rising tide. A luxury black car had pulled up outside. The doors opened slowly, and out stepped him, the old tailor. But not in rags. He wore a hand-stitched midnight black suit, sharper than any knife. Two global fashion executives flanked him, and behind them, cameras, Media, stylists, industry legends, people who hadn't been seen in public in years. Someone whispered with trembling awe, "That's Arif Zaman, the one who vanished a decade ago, the man whose gowns sold for six figures before they even hit the runway, the master of invisible seams, the last artisan of emotion in fabric." Maya's face turned pale. He approached calmly. The crowd parted like silk around scissors. Standing before her, he looked her in the eye. There was no malice, just something heavier. Truth. "I stitched this gown for you with silence," he said softly, "because you never truly listened." She could barely breathe. Then he turned, not to stay, not to celebrate, but to disappear once more into the world that had forgotten him until tonight. And in that moment, Maya was no longer the star of the gala. She was a footnote in someone else's legacy. The applause wasn't for her. The awe wasn't hers. All she had left was a dress she didn't deserve, and the painful memory of the day she mocked a poor tailor who turned out to be the greatest fashion artist the world had ever known. Because greatness never needs to announce itself. It just waits, patiently, for the right stitch.